Men who dated rich women, what happened? I've never been more broke than when I dated a rich woman. Even paying about 30% of the bills wrung me dry. So true. Hey, let's go out to eat with my friends. Okay, we eat. Her friend. Let's split the bill. Bill comes me 2 days later. Hey, let's go out to eat again. Everything is on another level. Happily married and together for over 6 years. Contrary to the most upvoted comments, having money does not dictate your personality. My wife is fantastic and her family is too. I came from nothing, but her family looked past all of that and has only tried to enable me. For my wedding gift they offered to pay for my master's degree. They are pretty frugal, except where education is concerned. My wife is amazing. The only rough spot was when she entered medical residency. Huge shock to go from never having worked to working 100+ hour weeks. Honestly, we don't talk about the money at all. We know it's there, and it's a huge stress relief. No matter how hard life gets, we know financially we are secure. Just a matter of being good to each other. Money corrupts, but not all. I'm happy for you. I get the impression it's more that money reveals, or perhaps money enhances what was already there. Money and power means you get less pushback when your shittier qualities emerge, and that can be a self-reinforcing cycle. It was good until I snapped into realization that I was always being pacified with gifts when she fucked things up big time. OC cheated. Next few hours I got gifted a fancy dinner, gifts and a titty in my mouth. Felt like I kept getting hush money for her affairs. Oh well. Same. My experience with rich girls is that they expect to always have their way and can simply buy me out. They could not, and I'm not dating one now. The feeling of always being bought doesn't feel right. It got to the extent where I would always overtime, and she got mad. She told me she would pay me to spend time with her according to my overtime rate. My ex got famous on YouTube during COVID. The money people make on that website is insane, guys. When I left her she had 2 houses and 7 figures in TDA, and that was just from a year or 2 of that life. Being partners with someone genuinely set for life like that was cool for some reasons. And yeah, she did pay for all the stuff that normally adds up in a relationship, like all the food and every outing and super nice Christmas gifts. But she actually became a pretty shitty person, so I left her. I have a good life of my own, so the appeal of her financial jigger security wasn't actually that valuable to me. Be careful with influencers, man, they have some fried validation pathways cooked to a crisp. Of topic to sub, but can you tell how many subscribers are we talking about around the time you left? And what were the sources of income other than ad revenue? Around 500k when I left. She did women's fitness like yoga and marathons and just girl lifestyle stuff. Ad revenue and sponsorships galore. 5 figures for doing a 30-second bit on a product etc. 10 years ago I started dating a girl in high school who had a very rich dad. They had a 3 floors chalet in an expensive neighborhood in my city. Her mom was never happy with the house, so they kept moving every 2 years around the richest neighborhood in my country, where the rent can easily go for $5k per month and a house can easily cost $2-3 million. Her dad was never home, always working, and her mom didn't need to work, so she had a shop as a hobby. My girlfriend grew up without knowing what the lack of money is, and she lived in her own world. We broke up a couple years later. Nowadays, her dad gave her a flat in the center of the city, and she put it up for rent. With the money she makes off it, she's paying rent for her current flat, and she's like, oof, life is so expensive. With the money I'm earning I have to look at food prices and put the laundry at crazy hours to save energy. Oh wow. I wish my salary was also coming from a gifted house and I knew that my life will always be 100% safe in terms of money. In our town all the local shops have been bought out by people like this. We call them vanity shops because the owners stock them full of beautiful items and curate it almost like a museum. They very rarely sell anything because it is all exorbitantly overpriced and only caters to the wealthy. The hours are always weird because they only mind the shop when they feel like it. And that's only if they don't have a bunch of people operating it for them. What they don't make in sales they do make in tax write-offs. Her dad was a banking manager. Her mum was a school principal. She wanted to go on European trips and fancy events. She worked 8 hours a week while at uni just to say she was essentially working. I was working class, had to work full time, study at uni, and take care of my grandparents. Homelessness was always around the corner. We never argued. I enjoyed every interaction and I wish her the best, but I could never give her the life she wanted to live, and we eventually parted. She is with some Italian lad now. Seems nice. Is absolutely jacked and smells good. Felt like she upgraded from a lovable Fiat to a Ferrari XD, but is what it is. Smells good, hol up. I do pretty well, $160k, but I'm on the lower end of the higher income bracket in New York City. She did international business with Japanese companies. Had an apartment in Midtown in a high-rise that had to be at least $1.5 meters, so I'm guessing she made around $400k. She hated casual joints and places like sports bars. Everywhere we went had to be some upscale places where slacks and collared shirts were the norm. It did help me cut back on drinking as I'd always have a single beer, since she was drinking $25 glasses of wine. One day a big argument happens, and she starts listing off all these things wrong with me, and the income difference is just too much was one of them. We break up and 3 months later she wants to reconcile, but I had moved on. Places like sports bars are my natural habitat anyways. It just made me realize that, although I might think I'm doing well compared to my family and friends, there's a whole upper echelon that I don't even compare to just yet. Weird how the income difference is only a problem in one direction. We met during the NBA finals. Our hometown team had made it back, and surprisingly, she was very knowledgeable about the game. She didn't look the type, but she knew her stuff. We had a really fast and deep connection. The night we first hung out, she took me to a friend's house, and from what I saw there, I knew this girl came from money. Turns out her family is the largest supplier of marble and granite for the region. Dad's a big time lawyer / investor. Mom's a world renowned interior designer. They had 3 vacation houses in our same city alone. She would throw money around casually, buy me whatever I wanted, pay for everything. I didn't like it really, because she would use it against me whenever I did something she didn't like. She would often treat me terribly and say I couldn't do anything about it because of her influence. For example, she physically assaulted me at the airport in front of tons of PPL. Super embarrassing. They called airport police, and her audacious response was to tell them who her father was and how they couldn't do anything to her. They quickly handcuffed and escorted her away. Haven't seen her since. She had daddy issues. Goal in life was to be richer than her dad, who owned 10 to 20 hospitals in the US. I bet he doesn't even know how many hospitals he owns. Well, I own 0 to 20 hospitals. I have it more dialed in. I own between 0 to 5 hospitals. She was obsessed with her money. Her father had left her some expensive properties and wanted me to be obsessed too. She actually ended up calling me a loser because I didn't have a plan as to how I was going to catch up with her financially. I worked full time and was doing okay evidently. I had every quality she wanted except being as wealthy, and there was no way she was going to share. I've been happily married to someone else now for 20 years. Lmao, the audacity. How are you gonna catch up to my wealth that I had handed down to me? Lmao, what you gonna do? Spawn rich parents? I mean, that's the mindset of a ton of rich people. Not really dated, but we were in somewhat a pseudo sugar arrangement. She's younger than me too. There's no payment or anything, but she pays for everything when we go out, and she buys me stuff. She was really nice and generous. What sort of stuff did you get? Video games and expensive pens. You got the expensive pens, but she got the expensive pen 15. Dated a woman who grew up working class, but was a self-made millionaire multiple times over. Hardworking, determined, total badass. Her income was about 10x mine. Everything she had in life she worked for. I loved that about her. Really no downsides. And she saved way more than she spent. So she was actually rich. Not just someone who looks the part, but is in enormous debt. Totally different, I guess, from a woman who is rich because she grew up rich, who generally isn't actually rich herself, and maybe looking for a replacement of the old income stream from the parents. Close bracket. What happened? Just didn't work out for reasons totally unrelated to money. Mostly because my career gave me unpredictable hours and some tough travel/lengthy periods away from home. It's ironic because given the income disparity, I could have quit and been a house husband with no material change in our living standards. But I don't think either one of us really wanted that. My GF got kinda rich while with me. She got mad that I couldn't afford trips and a house. She cheated and left me. I'm better for it. Together for 6 and married for 2. I didn't realize just how well off her family was until about 2ish years I'm in. Her family is old money and extremely financially responsible. I look up to them for that reason. Her dad came from nothing and talked about how his father-in-law didn't like him at all because of it. I'm happy that's something I don't have to worry about. Edit. My Phil, like myself, dated a rich woman and married said rich woman. Coming from nothing is not old money. That's just money. It seems like his mother-in-law was the well of one and the father wasn't when they got together. I dated a girl who was from a super rich family. She was nice, but genuinely disconnected from reality. Never had a job. No need for it really. Her parents spoiled her rotten. She basically lived the Instagram lifestyle, but for real, which lead to some mutual annoyance at each other. The last argument started from the issue that I refused to spend all my money traveling with her because she couldn't comprehend that I want to save my money. I wanted to buy a house, and I always save for retirement. She didn't really get it how real life works. That made me very irate after a while, and she probably felt like I don't want to spend time with her and only used money and work as an excuse. I dated a few rich girls, and by that I mean they had money and they didn't earn any of it. I have no problem dating people who worked hard and made a good living. I don't think I'll ever date another person who didn't earn their money. They don't understand consequences to life. You know that song Common People, where Jarvis Cocker sings you're watching roaches climb the wall, but if you called your dad he could stop it all? That's how it felt. A lot of poverty/middle class cosplaying, but without any stakes. If something traumatic happens to them, they cannot work for 2 years and live in their parents' villa in Mexico, whereas we all have to try not to have panic attacks in the bathroom at our office. It's not the same, and I've learned to stay in my station regarding dating. Dated a rich girl for a few years. Superficially, we had a lot in common interests wise. It was awesome going on trips at the drop of a hat when her parents didn't want her to be alone in a foreign country. Aka didn't want her alone around poor brown people. It taught me that privilege is definitely a real thing, and a lot of folks don't know just how good they have it. I would argue that our upbringings and philosophies around money were our eventual demise. She didn't really understand why everyone couldn't just send their kids to private school, buy things that were worth it, or why her less endowed friends were sometimes perplexed or even offended by the way she talked. Ideas about money can be a huge deal breaker in ways that you can't imagine until you're in it. I know you use the word endowed properly, but it still gave me a chuckle. She wasn't rich when we started dating. Her mom remarried a few years into our relationship, and then just like that we were off riding private planes to huge beach houses and whatnot. We are married now and it's amazing. Congrats and F you. Just kidding. Congrats. That's fair. My wife deserves it way more than I do. So my high school sweetheart and her whole family were rich. Multiple homes, vacations, new cars, etc. I came from a bread and butter poor family. She never really judged me on it, or at least not to me. My family always treated her well. She loved my family. However, her family was nice at first, but would start asking questions about me and my family. Then it came to where her mom said she didn't want me to drag her daughter down. It was a good relationship, but I was really immature. I got a job in high school and would pay for everything we did though. She always had money and name brand everything. She offered to pay, but I never let her. She had a new phone every year and had nice things and went on a lot of nice vacations. But she was very humble about it. Always tried to share with me. Her family did come to my mom's funeral a year before we broke up. They were curious to dig in, and find out why she died. It was an accidental odd. I knew she killed herself just like her mother. Anyway, I lost my S and started drinking and doing stupid S after because I didn't process S, and I had already had a traumatic childhood, and her dying brought it all up for years. Sent myself in a spiral I'm still recovering from today. I broke it off with her after I moved away from home because of my own stupid reasons. She was a very good girl and went to do pretty well for herself. Always humble. She eventually left her family that controlled her and walked away from that rich ass. She has money with her new man, but they help their community. If you go through my past comments though, this girl was wild in the bedroom, or should I say bathroom. Anyway, it depends on the character. You can usually tell a snobby, selfish, greedy person with high standards from a kind, gentle, loving one. She was the real thing, and I beat myself up about letting her go for a long time. I see her once in a blue moon. She usually says hi. Life goes on and she's happy. I'm happily married with children. She had a rich banker dad who paid for school. She was a veterinary surgeon and owned 4 rental properties and a 4-story condo in Denver. She was 38. I was 25. She was generous, very straightforward, and knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted kids. Like 2 months into it, said she didn't care if I stayed for the long run. I realized she just wanted me for my genetics and sperm. A few years after college, I was dating a social worker, low pay, who came from a very rich family. She drove a newish Porsche, had expensive fashion, etc. She took me to her family's river house that was full of toys like speedboats and jet skis. It was clear to me she either already had been handed millions or had parents buying her everything. She had a good heart. Didn't want to be a lawyer or doctor like her parents and siblings. But she just wasn't for me. I ended it around 3 to 4 months in. I'm married now. We are doing fine financially, but clearly nowhere near her bankroll. Occasionally I ponder what life might have been like with her. I probably could have retired the day I married her, but alas. You have to really click with someone if you plan to marry them. I dated a woman 18 years older than me when I was 25. I taught her kids swimming lessons and she'd always give me gifts/tips. One day she accidentally left her membership card and asked me to bring it to her at her home. I arrived to a giant mansion in a nice part of town and she basically seduced me, and it worked when I got there. From there we had an unofficial arrangement and she let me drive her fancy cars. Lease me a BMW and let me and my friends stay in/party in her downtown condo when we went out to the bars. The only condition is that when she wanted the D, I had to drop it all to get it to her. Lasted like this for about 2 years until I found out she'd replace me with another 25-year-old dude. I had a good time. No regrets. Bro, I think my current girlfriend is like this. She and I are total opposites and don't even enjoy being around each other most of the time. I live rent-free in a house her dad paid for in exchange for the D, and honestly, I didn't mind at first, but now, 2.5 years later, I'm thinking about ending things. She's nice, but I miss having a connection with a woman. All she does is work to the point where she's so stressed she can't even think 90% of the time. And I mean that literally. Like, thinking becomes the most stressful/impossible thing. Anyway, it's crazy how common this has become. Dating a rich woman who wants to be with a younger, fit guy. She wanted to be with a self-made man. Once she realized self-made took a lot of work, she jumped ship. I briefly dated a B-list celebrity from India who had moved to the UK to further her career. From working in India, she'd gotten to the point where she could have lived very comfortably, not completely lavishly, but she could do all of the things that she wanted to do without ever needing to work again. There was a lot going on in her life because she was trying to find work/working, so she didn't have much time for me. So when we did have time together, she was trying to treat me to all kinds of experiences and make it a memorable time for us. But honestly, I'd have been happier if we'd just had downtime together without the distractions and interference of whatever we were doing. First one. Parents told her to break up with me and find someone better off. She refused. Second one. Her mom told her to break up with me and find someone better off. She refused. Third one refused to even introduce me or tell her parents she was in a relationship. You date a lot of wealthy women. I grew up in a home with mom being incapacitated for work. She has manuscript. We didn't much money, but enjoyed the little things in life. When I was 20 I had a girlfriend, 18 years old, with a rich dad. She already had her bank account filled with over 100k at the age of 18. Because dad wanted to evade taxes. Her comments on my mother one day, well your mother is just not good at handling money. We broke up the day after. She used me as a human dildo and threw me to the curb when she was done with me. Fun while it lasted. I have never dated a rich woman, but a great friend and mentor was the kept man for an heiress while in his 30s. He said that any man who loves or marries for money ends up working 10 times harder every dollar they get. As someone who briefly considered entering a sugar relationship with a rich 61-year-old dude while I was 28, I can confirm he was too old and too young at the same time for it to really work out. His kids were older than me, and I cold beaned 60 by the time he died. Pretty incredible for a young and dumb college kid. Private jet across the country for dinner and a show. A completely new wardrobe and food I couldn't pronounce. That is until her husband found out. Unfortunately he was also my professor and dean of medicine at my university. Ouch. See you at Wendy's. She didn't have money of her own, but grew up around it. Her father was a corporate patent attorney making upper six figures, so she was completely in denial about her economic background. When challenged about it, she refused to admit how well off her family was because there was always someone wealthier she could point to, like Warren Buffett, whereas her family only had 2 properties, one of which was beachfront, and a housekeeper that cleaned their house twice a week. On the one hand, she encouraged me to step outside and take more risks. On the other, she was constantly surprised that I didn't have access to the same resources and social network connections that she did. So whenever whatever I was taking a chance on didn't pan out, she blamed me for failing. Ultimately, I felt less like a boyfriend and more like a social engineering project that allowed her to cosplay poverty. She sounds like a mix of Pacifica Northwest and Victoria Beckham.